Okay. All right. I want to begin our event tonight by acknowledging that we are located on Indigenous Ramaytush Ohlone unceded territory. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on this occupied land and that we owe a collective debt to its original inhabitants. Again, if you are just joining us, my name is Michelle Parker. Thank you to our candidates for making the time to be here tonight and helping us get to know them. Thank you also to the many volunteers who made this event happen, to our interpreters who are helping us make this forum accessible to families who speak Spanish or Cantonese, and especially to you for making the time to attend and learn so that you can be an informed voter on or before November 8th. The PTA, or the Parent Teacher Association, and in secondary schools we add an S for students, is the oldest and largest volunteer organization in the United States working on behalf of children and youth. And its legacy is founded in advocacy, addressing child labor laws, making sure there were hot lunches for children in schools, even making sure that there are yellow crosswalks near every school here in San Francisco. We strongly believe that our democracy only works if you participate in it, and you being here tonight shows that you take your responsibility as a voter seriously, so thank you. So I'm going to go over the format of the event. We will start with opening statements from each candidate. Then we'll move on to a set of questions we've come up with based on priorities of the PTA, questions that you all submitted when you registered, and important issues facing SFUSD and our students, families, and educators. Then we will break you into smaller groups where you will get 10 minutes with each of the candidates to ask questions that matter most to you. After that, we'll come back together for a final question and closing statements before we say goodnight. If you are having a tech problem or need help, you can send a chat message to co-hosts of the meeting and one of us will respond. If you have questions for the candidates, again, you will have a chance to ask those in the small groups. Candidates, I will let you know how much time you have to answer each question, and you can watch Claire, who is pinned and has a timer on her screen, to see how much time you have left. I will have each of you answer in a random order, and we will move that around for each round so that no one is always going first or last. Do I have any questions from the candidates before we get started? You all set? Thumbs up? Okay, great. And before I get started, I do know we have our other two candidates here, and I want to make sure, can Anne and Karen do thumbs up if you're here and you're ready also?
I'm here. I just can't figure out how to turn on my video. I'm joining you by phone.
No worries, but we'll take you by phone, and unless you can figure out video later, that's great. And then Anne, do we also have you somewhere? She was on the phone a minute ago.
So just a quick note,
Yeah.
I'm unable to pin the two candidates who are calling in from the phone or don't have video on. So
Okay.
Just for everyone to be aware that when they're speaking, that's why they're not popping up to the front.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Suze. And can you make Anne Shu a co-host, or are you not able to because she's on phone?
because she's calling in, I can't do that.
Okay. All right. So I will, I'm going to ask to unmute her, and we'll do that each time she speaks. Anne, can you hear us? Okay, she'll be on PC in 3 minutes, so hopefully we'll get her then. I do see she's on the phone. Okay, great. So we are going to get started with the opening statements. Before we do, I'd like to let you know which candidates are here with us tonight. Candidates, the order that I give you now in your introductions will be the same order we take for your opening statements. We have Lainey Motamedi, Karen Fleshman, Gabriela Lopez, Alita Fisher, Anne Shu, and Lisa Weissman Ward. And so we'll ask each of you to share an opening statement up to 2 minutes long, and let us know who you are, why you're running, why why now, what are your priorities if elected, and also maybe if you could let us know if you've ever been a PTA member or active in any other parent group or just worked with parents or caregivers in some way. And so we'll go ahead and get started, and let's start with Lainey, and then we'll go to Karen. Okay, go ahead, Lainey.
Okay, I will do my best to answer all of those questions. I'm Lainey Motamedi, and I was appointed in March, and I did not expect to be in this role. I don't take it lightly, and frankly, I have been working my tail off since I stepped into this role to help build the district up. My priorities have really been focused on the most immediate student and educator needs. So student success, fiscal responsibility, and those two things really underscore the need to rebuild trust in this district with our families and our educators and our students. As far as my engagement, I have been a parent in SFUSD for over a decade, from early education, elementary, and now middle school. I have volunteered in leadership in school site councils, PTAs, as well as helping in every way I can in school offices, recess, lunch rooms, tutoring help. My own parents are retired LA Unified School teachers. So I knew when I was a public school parent, when I became a public school parent, I was going to pitch in however I needed. And then 4 years ago, I was appointed to the Public Education Enrichment Fund Advisory Committee, which is a budget advisory committee, because the city is so very generous to our district. About $80 million is given to the city from, or to the district from the city each year. And in that role, I was super excited to learn more about district priorities and saw that there was a real disconnect between what district leadership was doing, how things were being communicated, and what was happening at our school sites and what our educators and students needed. And so as co-chair, I advocated for greater public transparency and management and decision-making. My background's in government, business, and nonprofit management and leadership here in San Francisco. And I've really drawn upon those experiences to push for greater emphasis on student success and alignment with how we spend our money and understanding of impacts. So that our students and our educators' learning environments and work environments are well supported. And I think I'm at my two minutes. I could go on. I will go on, but I will stop.
Thank you, Lainey. All right, we'll move on to Karen now. You want to share your statement?
Hello, and I apologize, everyone. I'm having some technical difficulties, but I'm going to join you just audibly by audio. My name is Karen Fleshman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm running for San Francisco Board of Education to unify San Francisco for San Francisco Unified. I have a decade of being a SFUSD parent, involved in my kids' school, supporting through volunteer fundraising and community building efforts, and also leading the school tours for prospective parents. Now my young people, my children are a little bit older, so it's more about carting them around to sporting events and supporting their other activities. My professional engagement with SFUSD is also extensive. I worked for many San Francisco-based nonprofits, including Year Up, Third Street Youth Center and Clinic, Education Outside, SEO Scholars, and in that capacity, I've visited almost every SFUSD school. My professional experience includes serving immigrants, helping them to become US citizens and to apply for asylum, and then 20 years of professional experience preparing young adults of color for success in college, careers, and life. And it was listening to my mentees describe the racism they experienced that caused me to shift focus to diversity, equity, and inclusion education. And that's what I do now, working in workplaces and school communities to shift the culture to be safe and positive for everyone, including at my kids' SFUSD school. My priorities are to invest in student and educator social, emotional well-being and academics, to provide budget transparency and accountability, and to promote collaborative decision-making. I'm particularly passionate about high schools and really want to bring my experience in college and career access to helping SFUSD high schools. So thank you so much for being here tonight, and I look forward to listening and answering your questions.
Thank you, Karen. All right, we'll move on to Gabriela and then Alita after her.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriela Lopez. I am an educator. I'm a teacher first. My background in education is extensive, going back over a decade. starting as a public school teacher in SFUSD schools. I was then elected to the Board of Education in 2018, where I served as vice president, then president for 2 terms, and simultaneously working at the University of San Francisco as a teacher educator. Today, I am working with future teacher candidates who are getting their credential, working on their master's in education, and serving students who are in SFUSD schools. So I'm fortunate that I still get to work with future educators during a time when education is under attack. That is primarily why I chose this role, why I chose to run again. Recognizing the shift we've seen in education, a lot of the harm that's been happening during the last couple of years, that's actually rooted in a lot of what we've seen across decades in the educational system, which many of us recognize as educators, as parents, as community members who are closely aligned to public schools. I am working with many community members across the city, many community leaders, parents, teachers, students who are all supportive and excited to engage once again with the school district, with the Board of Education, and be a part of the work that we're doing. As a commissioner, that was my main focus, ensuring that people who hardly get an opportunity to be in this space have the accessibility to do so, whether that's language barriers or even just having the information about what we're doing. That was my main role. And my priorities are increasing funding and resources in our school, improving special education supports, and investing in college preparation.
Thank you very much. Alita?
Hi, everyone. I'm running because I'm a former foster parent, now an adoptive parent, and I've been active at each of the 8 schools that my kids have attended over the past 16, 17 years. I've been on all the PTAs, usually PTA boards, sometimes the SSCs. Actually, when I was at Mira Loma, our PTA, my first year on the board, we were wondering, could we double our fundraising budget from 15 to 30,000? We absolutely did. I helped build the Welcome Committee. I actually started the Welcome Committee that paired incoming students with mentor families to help ease that transition into elementary school. And still to this day, part of what Mira Loma is known for is the strong community. So I'm very proud of the work I've done there. I'm running because I'm a special education advocate. I'm an engineer turned advocate because of the struggles of finding supports and services for my own kids in schools. So now, day after day, meeting after meeting, I fight alongside families to get the supports and services that help them succeed. I unfortunately have seen how much society and our schools can marginalize students who think and learn differently. And so I'm running to bring more inclusive programs into our schools, to update our reading curriculum, not just interventions, but also to just make sure that we give everyone the tools they need to be successful. Every student should reach their full potential and have all the resources and programs and classes and everything they need to be the best versions of themselves and gain the success that their families didn't get. I have spent 10 years working on district level advisory committees. I'm the past chair of the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education, sit on the LCAP task force, the APAC. I was on the attendance working group, reopening task force, charter school oversight, many more. I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk in more detail since that's my 2 minutes. So thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Alita. Let's move on to Anne, and then we will finish up with Lisa after her.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Shu. I am the only immigrant and business person on the current San Francisco School Board. I have spent 25 years working in high tech as a professional and entrepreneur, running my own companies for 18 years. I only got involved in school board politics during the pandemic when I found my teenage sons who are still enrolled in public schools. They were completely disengaged from learning while doing Zoom school for many, many months, a year and a half. They were instead playing video games, watching Netflix, talking with friends for up to 15 hours a day, every single day. And I looked to the school board to see what they were doing about the situation and found the school board not paying attention to this situation at all, instead doing a lot of politicking. And I got quite angry, and I think thousands of other parents as well across San Francisco, and we worked together to recall 3 school board members. And I personally helped form and led a Chinese API voter outreach task force to activate the significant portion of Asian. During the same time, I became the chair of SFUSD's Citizens Bond Oversight Committee to watch over the hundreds of millions of dollars that we give the school district for renovating schools. And I was the president of the Galileo High School PTSA, where my sons went to school. And my priorities on the board is really threefold: student achievement and academic excellence, safe schools, both physically and emotionally, and fiscal discipline and operational excellence.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, let's go to our final candidate, Lisa.
Hi, thank you everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us this evening. My name is Lisa Weissman Ward, and I was appointed to the SFUSD Board of Education in March of this past year. I'm the product of public schools from kindergarten all the way through high school, all the way through undergraduate, all the way through law school. Everything has been public education, so I have personally benefited from excellent and quality public educations. Professionally, I'm the Associate Director of the Stanford Law School Immigrants' Rights Clinic, and with this job, I wear 2 hats. With my attorney hat, I represent individuals facing deportation from the United States and asylum seekers fleeing persecution. And wearing my educator hat, I teach, I supervise, and I mentor law students. I focus on the growth mindset. I teach about how to engage in critical discourse, how to engage in conversations that are difficult and when folks are coming at it from different perspectives, and the value of negotiation and consensus building. But probably most important to the reason that I accepted the appointment and that I'm running for a 4-year term is because I'm a mom. I'm a parent of 2 SFUSD littles. They're still little. They're in 2nd and 5th grade. I have been a room parent in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. I had to take a break this year because of the work on the board. My professional work also involves regularly working with non-citizen parents whose children are members of the public school community, including SFUSD. It was an honor to be appointed to the school board in this past spring, and I'm focused on student-centered outcomes that I believe will rebuild the trust and promote equity and excellence for all of our SFUSD students. I'm really excited that in the 6 months that we've been on the board, my colleagues and I have passed a balanced budget. We've rescinded teacher and staff layoff notices, hired an excellent new superintendent who is laser focused on students and school sites, helped bring new revenue to the district, created a transparent and community-driven framework to improve high schools, and we've engaged under the leadership of Commissioner Matomedy to improve our processes and governance structures so that we can actually focus on the students. So SFUSD is at a crossroads, and I'm excited to be in the space working with community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so we're going to move on to a set of questions from the PTA. These questions we put together as part of what our PTA priorities, but also questions that you all have submitted through your registrations, and a compilation of that, and also just important issues happening right now in SFUSD. So we've got 5 of those, and we are going to put them in the chat as I ask them so that you can see them as the candidates are answering them. The candidates will have 1 minute each to answer each one of these questions. The first one is, the PTA has identified reducing chronic absenteeism as an advocacy priority. 29% of SFUSD students were chronically absent last year, more than double what it was pre-pandemic. Too many schools saw rates in the 50s, 60s, and even creeping up close to 90% of students chronically absent. Research shows more than 80% of children chronically absent in kindergarten read below grade level 3 years later. Those students are 4 times more likely to not finish high school, and those who drop out are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated. What can and will you do in your role on the school board to address this? And who are the essential partners across the city also working on this issue that SFUSD should be working with? Let's start with Karen, and then we'll go to Gabriela.
Research shows that nationally, 79% of teachers are white, and that are Black, Latinx, Pacific Islander, and Native students are much less likely than their white or Asian counterparts to report feeling connected to school, to report feeling that there's a caring adult at the school who recognizes and sees them and supports them. So I'm going to be really laser focused on how can we make our schools centers of belonging, a place where all students want to come to, a place where if students don't show up, there is a caring adult who notices, who reaches out to them, and who sees what's going on with them so that we can support them to continue coming to school, and that they want to be there because they feel like they are seen, heard, and belong.
Thank you, Karen. Gabriela?
So given my experience as an educator and my understanding of learning, we need to recognize a variety of issues that contribute to what impacts learning. And that has to do with a lot of things that are outside of a school district's purview, such as getting to and from school safely, so transportation, having access to affordable healthcare, access to healthy meals, adequate and stable housing, which impacts sleep, and other issues that of course impacts learning. I do believe that once we begin to shift who is an expert in these areas and who is able to take care of the same people we are serving, then we can really shift what we're doing in learning and how we're truly supporting our students. There are various departments across the city whose level of expertise in these areas can contribute to the shift we want to see. But unless all of those areas are met, all those human needs are met, we're going to continue seeing issues that impact learning.
Thank you. Alita, let's go to you. And then after Alita, we'll go to Anne.
Sure. I was honored to sit on the attendance working group a couple years ago where we spent 5 months digging deep into this issue, and did a huge root cause analysis throughout many, all departments of the district, out into communities, CBO, parents organizations, everything. And we found a lot of root causes. It's funny, one of the questions that we asked in every single engagement meeting was, what are your worst fears around attendance? And every single meeting, the majority of people said that we're going to do all this work and dig into attendance and that nothing's going to change. And here we are years later, and nothing's been implemented from that report. But what we found was Muni is a huge barrier for a lot of families, especially post-pandemic. We still have lines that aren't running at full capacity. Attendance officers at our schools, many families feel blamed and shamed when the attendance officers are calling home. They're not saying, hey, how can we help you? They're blaming the families and threatening repercussions. I could go on, but that's a minute.
I'm sure all of you could go on about a lot of these topics. Thank you, Alita. Let's move to Anne.
Thank you. Yes, I actually looked into the specific issue and called a family liaison at an elementary school. And I learned some very interesting things, because as we break down the attendance issue, I think high schools where students can take themselves to school, if they're not there, they maybe have different reasons than elementary and middle school kids whose parents generally bring them. So as I talked to the elementary school, I learned that, as Alita and Gabriela both mentioned, Muni, public transportation, is a significant issue. So we need to work with the Muni a lot more, as well as other CBOs that take care of other needs of the families, so that parents can support their students, and including bringing them to school, for the smaller ones. And we need to look into the details of the high school kids. What are the reasons that they are not going? So we really need to do a lot of work, not just to identify, but actually do the fixes, as Alita said.
Thank you, Anne. Lisa, can we hear from you? And then we'll finish up with Lainey.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate this question. I think we've obviously seen it being talked about in the news a lot, it is absolutely newsworthy, and we need to be addressing it. I mean, the question is, what can and what will you do in your role as a board? And so I want to answer it in 3 ways. One, it seems like already done. Alita has mentioned that there was a study. Great. Time spent understanding the root causes. Check. But the most important part, and the most important part of the work that we're doing is, then what? It is really easy to do a study. It is really easy to talk about all the problems. The second step that has to happen is identifying a plan and coming up with solutions, with steps, with accountability metrics, with interim steps. That's much harder work to do. So we need to do that. We need to be held accountable to that. There needs to be accountability and a plan. I think we can look to we can look south. LAUSD is embarking in a new project. LAUSD. I mean, we can look at the things that are happening to see what's working and move from there. But we have a lot of smart folks in the district. We need to have a plan and then execute it.
Thank you, Lisa. Lainey, go ahead and finish us out.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Lisa. I completely agree. The studies, we know it's an issue. One of the other things that we haven't talked about is the workplace conditions for our educators. One of the things that we're hearing right now is our educators really need additional support in the classroom. And when those earlier interventions are not available, whether it's learning supports or behavioral supports, it's a really easy way for kids to check out, whatever age that they may be, and not feel a sense of belonging at our schools, which also is attributable to truancy and absenteeism rates. So I'd like to highlight some of the bright spots. I was just at Francisco Middle School, and I've heard this from numerous educators this year. There's been more schools taking the initiative to put away phones, which doesn't sound like it would have anything to do with absenteeism or truancy, but it's actually creating community before school, during lunch, more attention in the classrooms, less distraction, less teachers having to harp after students. And Francisco, as an example, is seeing increased participation and decreases in absenteeism. So I think there are bright spots.
Your time is.
Oh yeah, sorry, I got so excited. Yeah, I got.
Thank you very much.
Shout out to our beacons. I meant to say that.
Appreciate the passion. All right, thank you. All right, so let's move on to our second question. The PTA has several priorities related to advancing equity for each and every child to ensure their essential needs are met, that we are addressing the impacts of systemic and institutionalized injustice, and that schools have a full and culturally responsive curriculum to meet the diverse needs of our student populations. What is your perspective on how well SFUSD is advancing equity? And how do you consider the issues of both excellence and equity? This is obviously a broad question with a lot of different directions that you can take, but you might include a view on any of the following: how SFUSD is serving students with special needs or disabilities, English learners, students ready for advanced or accelerated curricula, literacy, math instructional approaches, the arts, student assignment, or probably a lot of others I haven't even named. So this is a big wide open question to talk about equity and what's happening and how we might consider those issues. Let's start with Gabriela, then we'll move to Alita and then Anne. Gabriela.
Hi, yes. So the first thing that comes to mind and that I'll expand on is ethnic studies. It wasn't one of the things you named, but I do want to touch on it. As far as SFUSD's work in advancing equity, there are many areas where we are not strong, where we still need to support our community, specifically our Black community and Latino community across the district. I know that there's still much harm happening in many of our schools, and I've heard various examples from families. But I bring up ethnic studies because SFUSD is a leader in this effort, which is now heading at the state level. And all of the research that has been, that shows the success of it beginning over a decade is supportive of students advancing, many students who are coming from communities who are often not seeing themselves in the curriculum. So a lot of work that needs to be done in ethnic studies in SFUSD, but that is an area we know helps students feel like they're part of their school.
Thank you so much. Alita.
This is a question I could take 5 hours to answer and have in the past. I'm a talker, as you guys probably know. So the superintendent in his first board meeting this year mentioned targeted universalism. That is a huge, if you don't know much about that, I would highly encourage you to research that subject. You know, that's about putting strategic resources in place. That's where the rising tides lift all boats. That's where that quote comes from too. So research targeted universalism if you aren't familiar with that concept. As a special education advocate, this is my wheelhouse, but instead of talking about special education and specifically, I will say we refer a lot of people outside of our classrooms for supports and services because we don't have the resources we need in general education for peers to learn together. Our reading curriculum is a perfect example of that. Math in a lot of ways too. And I think that if we had stronger, like structured literacy, for example, in place in kindergarten, first, second grade, we could do a whole lot more work in classrooms instead of pushing kids out.
Thank you, Alita. And I apologize, our timer is not, earlier in our rehearsal, our check, it was allowing us to hear a buzzer. And so it's not allowing you to hear that. So hopefully you can keep your eye on that screen to see when your time is running out. Okay, let's move on to Anne.
Thank you. In terms of equity, I know that our district does spend a lot of resources on the populations of students that we need to support more. I think the problem is we're not necessarily getting the results, which means those populations of students that we're trying to help by spending resources, the results are not showing that they're being helped. So I think it's not an issue of whether we're spending enough or focusing on those populations, is what can we actually do to help those populations. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. The second point on the equity is that while we're spending a lot of resources and attention on those populations of students that need a lot of support, the ones that do not, we should not be limiting them. We should be encourage them to pursue more advanced learning that they are ready for and offering more opportunities for them to do that.
Thank you, Anne. So let's move on to Lisa, then Lainey, and then Karen. Lisa.
Like Alita, I could spend a lot of time on this. A couple things. I think to answer your question, I think that the district is absolutely committed to equity, 100%. I'm confident in that. I think the problem is we're not achieving it, and we need look no farther than our opportunity gaps and where we're seeing our numbers. Like we are not doing what we need to do as a district. I will say that, I, as an academic, I want evidence-based research. I want professionals. I want academics that understand how this works. I think we can learn from academics that have been studying this, that have tools that we can use. We can look just south to Long Beach. I know I keep talking about Southern California, but Long Beach has similar demographics and is doing much better when it comes to opportunity gaps. I think that SFUSD curriculum instruction can engage with these experts who have short-term and long-term research findings, and we can be doing much better. I absolutely think that equity and excellence have to come hand in hand. And for far too long, we pitted those concepts against each other, unnecessarily so, and to everyone's detriment.
Thank you, Lisa. Lainey?
Okay, trying to keep it to a minute. So what comes to mind is we are a maintenance district. I've dug into the numbers, and if you come in not kindergarten ready, you're probably not going to be at grade level really at any point. If you come in above, you'll probably maintain wherever it was in your in where you were originally assessed in your achievement. So we're just kind of maintaining where kids are rather than challenging, reducing gaps, and also pushing kids to do their best. Part of the issue is we don't really have a baseline of what are we offering to all students at all sites? What are the pathways? We got rid of a course catalog in 2014. It's never come back for high schools. So a lot of the information that would be motivating information for our students and families to engage and to push is not there. Long Beach has those things. LA Unified has those things. For instance, are we at 1 minute already?
Your time is up.
Lord, I had a really great example. I'll have to save it for the breakout room.
You can save it for the breakout rooms. Thank you, Lainey. And then Karen, if you want to finish this out. Is she still with us?
We have
She
the
might
big
have to be
challenge.
asked to,
There
I
she
was
is.
going to say, you might have to ask to unmute her since
She's got
Okay,
there.
can
All
you
right,
hear
go
me
ahead.
now?
We can hear you, Karen. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. We have a big challenge with equity in the district going back from the beginning of the district. When we look at our graduation statistics, only 6 out of 10 SFUSD students are graduating college and career ready. Among our Black students, it's 25%. Among our Latinx students, it's 32%. This into a city where we've created 7 jobs for every 1 unit of housing. We have one of the most dynamic labor markets in the entire country, and we are not doing anything to connect and prepare our young people to that labor market. That is the work that I did for Year Up and for other organizations, is really what does it take to work with a young person, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, all the way through graduation, so that they can graduate college and career ready. I believe that if we do individualized learning plans, really get to know our students, what are they passionate about? What would they like to do? What are they curious about? And what are they good at? And connect them to the skills, experiences, networks, and knowledge that they will need, that they can all thrive. They can either go to college through one of the great college access partnerships, like at Mission High School, or they can enter the careers that our family supporting but don't require a college degree. For example, we have a big nursing shortage. We can prepare young people for those careers.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, thank you all for those answers. Our third question is, one might say that one of the greatest needs SFUSD has right now is to build trust with its students, families, and staff. There have been severe ongoing issues related to payroll for teachers and other staff. Students want more room for their voices to be taken seriously. You can hear them regularly speaking up in board meetings, right? Many parents across schools, cultures, neighborhoods are looking for deeper partnerships with SFUSD, more meaningful. What can you do in your role, and will you do in your role on the school board to help build trust? So we will start with Alita, and then Anne, and then Lisa.
The joint advisories, we've been saying this for years. Every year we report, we tie the LCAP accountability measures to our families' priorities and present it to the board, and every year they go nowhere. This has been a huge frustration for families. So yes, huge. I think the biggest way that we build trust is we increase our communication. We've got to go and meet our families where they are. There's a lot of families that come to the microphone, because that's at our Board of Ed meetings, and use that as their last, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, like Leia with her, in front of R2-D2. We need to bring back the Office of Family Voice. We need transparency and accountability. You shouldn't have to go all the way to the Board of Ed to get your needs met. There should be ombuds people. There should be conflict resolution. There should be steps along the way that are clearly articulated and independent. I think a big problem that we have right now is that accountability piece. It's only a minute. We'll talk more about this hopefully in a breakout room.
There's always more to say. Thank you, Alita. Anne.
Yes, I think the way that we build trust is to actually make our systems better through processes and criteria. Right now, this whole district is run by a bunch of people with no process and no criteria for making decisions. So whoever's sitting in that spot, with whatever life experiences, professional experiences he or she have, they make those decisions without any consistency. When this person moves on and the next person comes into this job, they make different decisions. And that leads to just a lack of transparency and lack of trust. So I have been championing that ever since I got on the board, up until last week when we met, is process and criteria, and then communicate that to the general public. This is the way that we do things. This is the way that you can contact us. And this is the way how decisions will be made. I think that will go a long way.
Thank you, Anne. Lisa.
Thank you. I agree with a number of things that Alita said and also that Anne said. I think that I would focus on two things. One, accessibility. So similar to what Alita said, right now, the podium at 555 Franklin is the only mechanism for engagement. And let's be real, that's not engagement. We as a board, we by ed code rules actually cannot respond to public comment. So it is a one way and that's it. And that does not feel satisfactory, and that's not real engagement. So we need, and it's also very exclusionary for folks that have folks at home, that have families, that are single parents, or just like are exhausted by the end of the day. That doesn't allow for access. So we need to expand into the community. I think of the analogy of we need to set more tables. We need to make sure that the seating is comfortable and that we are serving a variety of options that folks want to eat. And we need to make sure that those tables are in various places. And then we need to actually do the work. We need to do the work, because all the talk without actually doing the work builds no trust.
Thanks, Lisa. We'll move to Lainey and then Karen and then Gabriela.
Yeah, so for the last couple weeks and continuing this week, we've had 20 listening sessions out in community at school sites, and primarily attended by educators and families, which has been great, and which is the first step. We're actively looking at reviewing our vision, values, and goals, which, I mean, this is a first. As a parent in the district for over a decade, this is the first time I've seen this. So I think it's really exciting. But one of the big things for me is our budgeting and planning process is out of compliance with what the Department of Education wants us to do as a district. And that means our school site councils are basically underutilized and unsupported, untrained, and the information that they do put forward goes nowhere. Same with our advisories. And that is totally out of step with what we should be doing and what we are required to be doing. So as a Board of Ed commissioner, if you've attended meetings, you've heard me push hard on staff to flip this. We need to be in service of our school sites, in service of our families, rather than a top-down decision-making organization. Our obligation is to serve and to provide quality public education to our family or to our students. And that means listening to our families and our educators as well.
Thank you, Lainey. Karen?
Yes, I agree with what Lainey said. I believe in collaborative decision-making, and the way things are currently done, it's pitting schools and communities against each other. I think that if we can bring all the stakeholders in the room together and look at what our budget looks like, look at what our priorities are, establish what equity looks like, and have everybody's voice involved in the decision-making, that's going to go a long way towards building trust and building community. And I will add that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution and often furthest away from the resources and authority to make decisions. I'm always going to be going to those closest to the problem and hearing directly from them, what are the solutions that they want to see happen? And then how can we scale those solutions district-wide so that it can help other people in the same situation?
Thank you, Karen. All right, let's end this question with Gabriela.
So I know that in the last couple of years, there's also been a lot of pain that has led to more mistrust in our school district. And as a former commissioner, my priority was to be in those communities, to hear from the people who are being harmed and bring those messages and experiences to the school board. Recognize that experience in my decision making. I was connected. I was in communities. I was speaking their language and making information accessible. But I also know that I can build on that by continuing to connect with people after harm is done. That's where we build trust, when there's making sure that we're following up, there's follow through, and there's action that's taking place. But it has to continue with the people who we're connecting with, so that they feel they are part of the solution the entire way.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for those answers. Our next question. The current school board has recently shifted their governance focus, saying that it will advance positive outcomes for students. To the current school board members, please explain this rationale and what student outcomes you are expecting as a result. How will we, the public, know that you are successful? To the candidates who are currently not on the school board, what do you think about this approach? And what would you do similarly or differently? We will start with Anne, and then Karen, and then Lisa. Do you need, and let me know if you need me to repeat that.
Sorry, I think I got it. Thank you. So we have been undergoing training for the last 4 months on governance to shift from what we call a patronage model of board governance to a student outcome focused governance model, where we do not listen to the loudest or we do not appease, let's say, the loudest voice in the room, but we really focus on student outcomes, what students can know, what students can do and learn. And that we hope to avoid a lot of the politics. And we have been, Commissioner Matamati has relooked at our board rules so that we actually follow that model, so that we let the educators, the superintendent and his team, who are experts, figure out how to educate the students, and we, the board, only hold them accountable to that. So we're setting 5-year goals in the community right now and should be able to approve them on October 25th, and then shift into let's say, a monitoring model.
Thank you, Anne. Karen?
I agree with the focus on student outcomes. You know, I worked for Year Up, which has some of the best outcomes of youth serving organizations. And we drilled into very minute detail to achieve those outcomes. And I think it can be great for driving accountability. As I look at the outcomes that have been proposed, though, I'm a little bit concerned that the focus on what the graduates are capable of doing in terms of having agency, it seems very nebulous to me, and I'm not quite sure how we will be able to determine if the graduates have agency. I think it's important that we have outcomes that, you know, like how many of our graduates got into college, how many of our graduates were able to start working. That's what I would like to see in terms of student outcomes. And I agree, like focus on the outcomes, then hold the experts accountable toward achieving those outcomes is the right way to govern the district. I want to make sure, though, that in the process of doing that, we keep equity and the most marginalized students and the most marginalized families, that we continue to listen to them and make sure that they are being served. So
Okay.
it's not just all of the students, but the most marginalized are advancing.
Thank
too.
you. Thank you, Karen. Okay, let's move to Lisa.
I love this question. And I'm not going to steal Commissioner Matamati's thunder because she really has been carrying the heavy load here. So I want to thank her for that. The governance stuff is, we want to govern. We want to be focused on process. We want the work of the SFUSD board to be boring. Like it should not be making news headlines for performative politics. It doesn't help our students. It doesn't help our educators. It doesn't help our caregivers. It doesn't help our community. So what it means to me to be focused on governance, and Commissioner Matamati can tell me if I'm accurate on this, is we're focusing tools, programs, and we're focusing on tools, programs, and staff that will actually improve student outcomes. We're holding ourselves, me as a commissioner, and the superintendent accountable by using the methods and goals and performance measures that we established through the process that Commissioner Hsu mentioned. We're working with experts and learning from others that have student-centered strategies that have resulted in improved literacy and math levels. We're following our governance rules that we just voted on at our last meeting to make sure that we are not getting distracted and getting sidelined. Oh, I'm out of time. I wasn't paying attention. But I'll just say, and we're making sure that our budget has a direct through line to every single student outcome. If it doesn't match up to our budget and our LCAP, we should not be engaged in the work.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we'll have Gabriela, Lainey, and then Alita.
So as an observer, taking a look at the student outcomes, it's hard to recognize and understand. So I'm thinking about the people that we're serving and how this information is even accessible. I'll point back to my original point about if students' needs aren't being met, then we can have all of these outcomes we want, but it won't be a functioning focus because there are all of these areas that aren't even brought up in the student outcomes reporting, or it's not anything that's accessible enough for any person who's glancing to be able to understand. So I think that's the first error. And unless outcomes begin with how students are feeling joy and caring and love in their classrooms, we're not going to get there as we recognize what human needs are. So I think there's a lot more work that can be done, but this student outcomes focus needs to start where we're with human needs.
Thank you. Lainey?
You know, we are a governance board. We have an obligation to run a district. There's fiscal responsibility. There's also student outcome and success responsibility to do that. The way we've done this for the last many years has not worked. It was totally obvious during the pandemic. It was not working. So the governance focus is a real shift to commit to 50% of board time being focused on student outcomes and student work, student-focused discussion. Previous boards spent approximately 0 on that, actually looking at what is happening in the classrooms. As far as our committees, we're committed to putting together committees, but they have to be with a purpose, with deliverables and a timeline, and connected to what students can do and learn, and to demonstrate that. I will also direct people to look at Board Rule 9310. All of our policies need to have legal compliance, fiscal impact, student learning impacts, and also have benchmarking and data. They need to be informed by the reality of what it takes to educate and support our students and educators, rather than just ideas that individual commissioners may bring forward on their own.
Okay, thank you, Lainey. And let's finish up this question with Alita.
I appreciate all the input so far, and I really appreciate that this question follows the trust question. I think they're actually very well tied together. One of the things I want to name, that the central office structure has been broken for many years. As someone who's been involved and worked with commissioners over 5-10 years, it was hard to get anything done. You know, it was hard to work with leadership. It was hard to work with the superintendent. We should be passing budgets as value statements, right? As both, and we've heard multiple people, Lainey, Lisa, say, you know, we need that through line between our budget, you know, and student outcomes, right? That we need to connect those dots. And in the absence of being able to do that, what has happened is lots of resolutions have been written in the attempt to make it happen. Like last year's reading resolution. We know we need to improve reading outcomes. You shouldn't have to write a resolution to do it. You should be able to work with the superintendent who works with the curriculum and instruction department to help put together the team. But when we couldn't do that, we wrote a resolution to start the work that continues today. And we saw the TNTP report, it's much needed. So I'm hoping with this new, new superintendent, new structure, we can do more through governance than we used to be able to do through resolution, and actually tie the budget components together.
Thank you, Alita. Okay, the last question of this section. PTA supports all children and families, and adequate school funding to support the whole child has been an advocacy priority for far too many years. How should SFUSD continue to address the budget crisis it finds itself in a way that is both student-centered and prevents SFUSD from falling under state control now or anytime in the near future? How might your budget priorities support students who need more academic, social, and emotional support? We're going to start with Lisa, then go to Lainey, and then Karen.
Thank you. So I think that this question absolutely follows the last question, which is by engaging in the proper and appropriate governance structures, we are going to be able to improve our budget crisis. We are making progress. We passed the balanced budget. When we adopted our 2022-2023 budget, our projected shortfall for unrestricted general fund was nearly 22 million. And with in our unassigned balance fund, and with our revised budget, that shortfall is now to 1.5, with an additional 20 in our unassigned balance fund. So we are absolutely making progress. And the key is we need to be making sure that all of our budget priorities are in fact consistent with our LCAP priorities. We are supporting that the district has been working with the city. We are supporting Prop G, which is going to bring in critical money to support the whole child, support the community schools model. We got state funding just before the end of the school year that will also support the community schools model, which will help support the whole child as well. So I think continuing down that path, we're going to be in a much better place.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's move to Lainey.
I am a big fan of following the money. And after spending 4 years on PFCAC and had real trouble, I am relentlessly following the money in this district. And that means we're going out for a new RFP for a new auditor. We've had the same lazy auditor for the last 10 years. It's time to get rigorous and look at what's happening with our money and how it's connected with students. We're also directing the superintendent to be very clear about student priorities and how all of our funding is lining up either with our mandated obligations or our student priorities within that. There's also areas around contracting practices. I'm really interested in how do we build out and support our workforce rather than contract out. We don't seem to have clear standards as to how those decisions are being made. That's another area that I'm really interested in understanding so we can both support our workforce and reduce costs. So there's a number of different ways that I think there's low-hanging fruit to just do some basic best practices around fiscal management that will allow more flexibility. But there's a lot of work to do. But I'm excited to dig in, and it's exciting to be a commissioner who can push to dig in.
Thank you, Lainey. And one quick request for all of you candidates, if you can reduce your use of acronyms, because there are lots of folks in our audience who don't know what those are, that would be really helpful. Karen, let's move to you.
Yes, I'm grateful that the city is proposing Prop G and for the other city funding that comes into SFUSD, but we really need to work statewide with stakeholders to reform Proposition 13. You know, California's public schools used to be #1 in the country. Now we're number 44 between Wyoming and West Virginia, and it comes down to funding. And we need to make sure commercial property owners are paying their fair share. And then I agree that we have to have proper oversight and accountability and transparency. For example, we know that there's 31 schools on the Williams list of schools that need repairs, and that the SFUSD hired an evaluator who marked them all as being in very good or good condition, when in fact they are not in very good or good condition. And improving the school's physical condition is going to be one of my top priorities on the board.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, let's move to Gabriela, and then Alita, and then we'll end with Anne.
So our approach with zero-based budgeting really ensured that we focus on the classroom first. So in any given budget, we have to think of a daily classroom experience that is thoughtful and fruitful and has all of the necessary resources. And then we build up to any other programs, but we focus our funding on that first. That is why we're a school district. That is why we're here. I do believe the school district has a lot of habits of unnecessary spending or ineffective spending because there aren't the proper ways to measure programs, measure specific departments that are supporting students. So that also needs to shift if we're really utilizing our dollars in the best way. And ultimately, we know that public school districts aren't fully funded. So there's a lot of ways that we can advocate. Some have already mentioned at the state level. Within our own city, there's ERAF, the Education Revenue Augmentation Fund, that lives in the city's budget, but should be in the school district's budget, and rightfully ours.
Thank you. Alita?
These are all amazing questions, and none of them can any of us do justice to them in a minute. I understand our time constraints, but would love to have a beverage with anyone who wants to talk about these more, because we could go so much further. Budget, yeah, chronic underfunding. Special education is probably the area where we're most chronically underfunded. Our special education budget has increased by 6% over the past 5 years, but the allocations, the demands, has actually increased over 30%. So that's a huge mismatch there. We need to do a better job of implementing MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. We need to do a better job with our instruction in gen ed. When you refer a kid from gen ed into special education, it costs 3 times as much to support them in gen ed and in special ed as in gen ed. So if we taught all of our kids to read in gen ed with an appropriate reading curriculum that had the right data, where we actually had the metrics we needed to measure, because units of study and F&P don't do that. But if we could actually do that and drive change in gen ed, we could save ourselves so much money on the amount of what we're spending in special education. That's just for reading. There's a bazillion other examples like that.
Thank you. And I will tell you that it was very difficult for us to narrow down the questions. So that's why you get some pretty meaty questions. Let's end this question with Anne, and then we'll be moving on to our next section.
Okay, thank you. So we are not a poor district. We have $1 billion budget. That is not a small number. Okay, so since joining the board, I hear a lot about revenue sources, getting federal, state, city, and philanthropic support. I think we should put more emphasis on the expense side. Okay, we have $1 billion. Are we spending it wisely? As Commissioner Motamedi mentioned, audit. I want to audit all of our contractors, every one of them, okay, to see if they are, anyway. And I also want to benchmark our school district with other better run school districts on many fronts, including, for example, central office versus school size, staff versus student ratio, etc. Why are other districts who have much less money than we are doing much better in terms of results? And then lastly, still look for revenue generating opportunities, because we have 150 properties that perhaps some of them can generate some revenue for us.
Thank you, Anne. And thank you all for your thoughtful answers to those questions. We do realize they were very meaty, and you could spend a lot of time talking about any of those, probably a whole meeting. But thank you for trying to keep that brief. Before we move on to this next section, I do want to note that we are running a little behind because of the technical difficulties we had at the beginning. And so we're going to go a little later than 9 o'clock, if that's okay with everyone, because I want to make sure that as we move into this next section where people get to have a little more close one-to-one contact with our candidates, that we are able to make time for that. So candidates, can you give me a thumbs up that you're okay with staying a little later?
Do you have a time? Just because I've got family stuff, do you have a time like 9:10,
Like
9:15?
9:15 or 9:20? Would that work?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So we're moving into our breakout room section. We are going to split all of the attendees into 6 groups to have a little bit more face-to-face time with the candidates. People needing Spanish or Cantonese interpretation will stay here in the main room so that we can provide that service. We will also be turning off the recording while you are in the small groups and then begin recording again once you come back to this main room. Each of these breakouts will have a facilitator, and I'll get to you in 1 second, Gabriela. Each of these breakouts will have a facilitator who is a member of the Second District PTA Executive Board. They will spend 2 minutes with you before the first candidate comes in to get a sense of what questions your group has. And we will also be asking you to make some community agreements before you start interacting with each other and the candidates. Those agreements are step up, step back, meaning we want you to make room for voices other than your own in that small group. Second is it's okay to ask tough questions of our candidates, but please be respectful and curious. And the third is please keep your questions brief so there is time for other people's questions too. Candidates also please try to be brief and keep your answers to 1 minute or less. And then finally, speak from your own personal experience and avoid generalizations. Before I keep explaining the directions, how this will work, Gabriela, was there a clarification that you wondered?
Just wondering if we could have a body break, like, is there a moment I
sure,
can step
sure.
away?
Sure, we can totally do that. In fact, you'll be able to do that because when we open up the breakout rooms, you'll have a couple minutes where you're just chilling. So in that couple of minutes, you can absolutely take a bio break. Thank you for that. And please, candidates, let us know if you need that another time. Okay, thank you for that. In those breakout rooms, if you are someone who prefers to listen, you can absolutely do that in the breakout room. There is no pressure for you to ask a question to be a part of the breakout rooms. And after our facilitators do that quick intro in your room, we'll send a candidate into your room and you'll have 10 minutes with them before they are switched to another room. You stay where you are. We'll send messages to the rooms when there are 2 and then 1 minute. We'll give you warnings at 2 minute and 1 minute warnings before the candidates have to rotate, and then they will just disappear and a new candidate will appear in your room. So in just a second, you're going to see an option to choose a breakout room at the bottom of your screen. Again,
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So, or clarifying. So how many rounds are we doing?
6.
6. Okay.
Yeah, there'll be 6 rounds. In just a second, you'll see that option to choose a breakout room. The candidates, hold on 1 second for you all. Again, if you need Spanish or Cantonese interpretation services, please stay here. This will be one of the breakout rooms here in the main room because this is, what was that?
It's me, Tech.
Oh.
So I already opened the breakout rooms, so there's probably not a button that's going to show up, but you should be able to go to the bottom of your screen.
Okay, I'll explain that then. Okay.
And then you can explain the rooms. And for the candidates, for the first couple minutes, you all get to go to the green room and hang out there together. And then, because the main room is actually going to be its own breakout room.
Right. Thanks, Suze. Okay, so the reason why we're keeping Spanish and Cantonese people who need those services here is because it is the only place where we can provide the interpretation channel in Zoom. If you don't need interpretation, you can choose any of those 5 rooms or stay here in the main room, except for that one that is marked candidates only. That is going to be for the candidates only. And that is where we're going to send them until your 2-minute intros are finished. We would like to have, yes, you're sent to the green room, Alita, the VIPs. We would like to have no more than 12 or 13 people in each room. So if you see a room already has reached that number, choose a different room. If the rooms are a little uneven, Suze, our tech person who you just heard, might move people around a little bit. Are there any questions from people in the audience? You can send a note to the co-hosts here in the chat and we will see if you understand or have any questions before we send you away. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So everybody off to the races. Go on to your breakout rooms and enjoy yourselves. We look forward to bringing you back to close it all out. And we'll see you soon.
The candidates will be in every room, so choose your favorite color.
I keep trying to click on it,
I
but
know.
it moves.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing any options on the bottom.
So if you click on more,
Okay.
You'll see breakout rooms.
If you're on
Yeah.
a phone, it might be in the upper left-hand corner.
Yeah, I have an iPad, not a computer. Is there any way you can? I'm not seeing that.
We might be able to assign you. Let's see.
Yeah. I'm in the meeting.
Hava, you could also stay in the main room because this is technically a breakout room.
You want to stay?
Okay, but it's
And-
in English. I
It'll
wish
be
I
in-
spoke multiple languages.
Yes, stay with us, Hava.
Okay, I'll just hang out unless you figure out how to move me or whatever you want to do, but I'm not seeing it, so. Okay.
Okay. All right, are we set there? And
Oh, hi, Todd.
and do our facilitators, are they going to their rooms?
Are you putting us in our rooms?
I think you have to select your room, Carol.
I'm having the same problem.
Oh,
You don't know
you're,
where to find it?
let me see if I
Well,
can,
hey, Joe Rodriguez.
I might be able to help. Hold on. Just give me a second.
Carol, you're in the orange. Can we just put you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on a second.
Do you want me to assign her?
Yeah, sure. That'd be great.
Okay.
And I'm gonna unpin you for now. Or do you want to
Yeah,
be pinned?
no, please unpin me. Thank you.
Clearly, purple is everybody's favorite color.
And I will remove spotlight for.
Rex Ridgway's here. This is so great. And Vanessa, I just love seeing people I know here. Orange needs some people.
Here, let's see.
Orange and green need people.
Green is the candidate.
Oh, here's the green room. Never mind. Orange needs people
And
and
yellow.
yellow needs people. Orange and yellow.
Let's see.
You're welcome to move me if you know how. I just can't. It's up to you.
I can move you to orange, Hava.
Okay, here it is. See ya.
I think so. We've got 10, 10. Yellow could maybe use. I might.
So Michelle, is this the beginning of our 10 minutes or the
This
beginning
is
of our
your
2 minutes?
Yeah, this is your 2 minutes and we're gonna, yeah, go ahead.
There's
Um,
another
everybody.
Michelle. Another Michelle Parker. Okay, sorry.
It's a candidate who's signing in with Michelle's link. So hi, everybody. This is our breakout room. And as Michelle explained, the candidates will come in here one at a time. And so just a few reminders about how we can have a successful candidate breakout experience. We're asking you to step up and step back. So make room for voices other than your own. I know some of you have questions that you're dying to ask, but so do other people. It's okay to ask tough questions, but be respectful and curious and listen to the answer. Keep questions brief. We only have 10 minutes. We want to make sure that all get answered. And speak from your own experience. I think that stories about your own experience with your students in the district are going to be the most powerful and useful to the candidates. Does anyone have any questions before we start? And this is also the room with interpretation. So if you need interpretation, there's a...
Okay, great. So we're gonna move on with our closing statements, starting with Anne.
Thank you. So I just want to restate my priorities. The first is student achievement and academic excellence. Second is safe schools, both physically and emotionally for all our students. And third is fiscal discipline and operational excellence for our school district. I think it's time to reform SFUSD. It is time to stop the politics, and it is really time to focus on educating our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lainey?
So you've now discovered why we moved our closed sessions to the beginning from 5 to 6:30, because I get sleepy. And so I'm a little bit punchy right now, but thank you for sticking with me. I hope you have heard my commitment and my competency in doing this work. And I really appreciate you taking the time and, going late this evening as well. I'm very focused on student priorities, our fiduciary responsibility and our obligation to serve our kids well. And whether or not you have kids in the district or not, which I think you all do, but nevertheless, we need to keep young people in our city, and we need to have our kids graduating ready for, their future in the city. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Lainey. Gabriela?
Hello again. I just want to appreciate this space and the work that you all do. That is the heart of this campaign, just engaging with folks, connecting, hearing from you, hearing what your priorities are, and building that and connecting that with my own experience as an educator, as a teacher educator, as a former commissioner, and someone who understands the issues in a decision-making space. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Thank you. Also want to thank you all for being here until about 10 o'clock at night. I hear my children are still up, which is a problem, but we'll deal with that in 22 seconds. SFUSD is at a crossroads, and I have the skills that will move us forward toward the quality education that all of our students deserve. I want my kids and your kids and your neighbors' kids to have the very best possible education. And I'm committed to doing that for all of our students in SFUSD. And I would love to have your support and appreciate this opportunity to engage with this group and for the amazing questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Karen?
Thank you all for the hard work that you do and for your passionate commitment staying here till 10 o'clock at night. It is so heartwarming to see people who care this much about our students. And I care this much about our students too. That's why I've spent 20 years of my career preparing young people for success in college careers and life, becoming a mentor, really listening to young people and helping them connect to their purpose. And that's what I want to bring to every SFUSD student. I know that we can get them college and career ready during their time at SFUSD and connect them to all of the opportunities here in San Francisco, and it's going to make our overall community thrive. That's what I mean by unifying San Francisco for San Francisco Unified.
Thank you, Karen. Alita, last but not least.
You know, these past couple years have kind of felt like what I experience a lot of times in my IEP meetings, because no one brings a special education advocate into a meeting where the team's getting along, the student is thriving, getting everything they need, right? You bring an advocate in when there's a sticking point and you need someone to help you work through it, right? And so that's the mentality I'm bringing to the work. There's so much more that unites us, and if we focus on the student and we put strong plans in place with the right resources, we can help every single one of our students thrive and succeed and be that next generation of greatness. That's why we all believe in our public schools, right? We want to help our kids succeed. So I look forward to doing that work, continuing it, and hopefully on the board.
Thank you, Alita. Just a few closing thoughts. Thank you again to all of our candidates for making time for us to learn about you and your leadership. Thank you to our volunteers who made this event possible tonight. Thank you everyone who attended the meeting tonight. I know we've had some live tweeting. We've got folks who are going to be talking about this later, so we really appreciate all of you for being here. We hope this information was helpful to you and will help you to decide who to vote for to represent you and your personal priorities. Please remember to vote on or before November 8th. If you have not yet registered to vote, you can do that by October 24th through the link that Sharon is going to post right now into the chat. Voting districts for supervisor elections have changed this year. For more information about how that might affect you, Sharon will also post that link in the chat, depending on where you live. The Second District PTA has endorsed both Prop F, the Library Preservation Fund, and Prop G, the Student Success Fund, and encourages you to vote yes on those. A link to the study committee reports will be posted in the chat for you to review at your convenience. The California PTA has endorsed Proposition 28, which supports arts and music in public schools. To learn about that measure, the link will also be in the chat. And then we will post a video recording of this forum on our Second District PTA YouTube channel by Friday. Please share it with your networks who also might be looking for information about how to vote. And that is it. We'll close it all out and let you all go back to your families. Thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your week.